I just noticed the mileage on the van is sitting at 81,900 even. Well, hello YouTube, this is Chuck, and it's Thursday, February 15th, 2024, about 2:30 in the afternoon. And as you can tell, I'm sitting here in the van. I like to shoot videos from here for a variety of reasons, and any of you who have been with me for a long time know what those reasons are, but got quite a few new subscribers, and welcome aboard to all you people. The reason why I sit out here, and even though this video I'm getting ready to shoot doesn't really have anything to do with the van, but this is a nice quiet place. The acoustics are good, the lighting's good. It enables me to stop and think about what I want to say and get me away from any distractions. And it's just the spacing is good. Right now I can hold the camera braced on the steering wheel so it doesn't jiggle. There's just a number of reasons to use this as my recording studio, and so I frequently do it. As I said, got a lot of new subscribers here, and I appreciate it. And this channel has a lot of other content other than the van stuff. The van stuff is what brought a lot of you here, and there will be additional van content. My recent video about senior women in van life just really took off, and I thought that might be a popular topic, but it's performed way past my greatest expectations. I looked just before I came out here, and it's over 15,500 views, which makes it the most watched video since I've started the channel 16 months ago. So I think it's great. I've been a lot of comments on it. I've tried to answer most of them. I haven't answered them all. Most have been very positive. There's been a few negative comments, but then, you can't please everybody. But there'll be more van content. But the story I'm going to tell you today, there is a connection, but it's basically a firefighter story. And let me tell you the connection is one of the comments that was made on this senior women and van life video was a lady that said that was telling me that she went on a long trip with the van, and she was headed back home. She was from the Dallas area, and she was headed back home, and she got a little ways east of El Paso. I assume that would be on I-10, and the transmission went out on her van, and it was kind of a horror story. And yeah, and that kind of stuff does happen. But like a lot of things that triggered a memory, a fire department memory, and I thought it was a story that was worth telling. And it's actually a two-part story, and hopefully I won't make this thing too long. But back in the 80s, a lot of us used to moonlight, if you will, as transport drivers for new fire trucks. Nowadays, they have people that are dedicated that just do that, and they have to have log books and drug testing and all this kind of stuff like that. So they're all employees of various transit companies. But back in the day, the fire equipment dealer down in Phoenix, they used to have a list of guys that worked for the various fire departments. If they needed a driver, they'd call us, and we had a half a dozen guys that would do that, including me. And what would happen is, if they needed a driver to go someplace and pick up a truck and bring it back to Phoenix from a factory, they'd give us a call, and we'd figure out how we could swap shifts around to make sure we had coverage and all this kind of stuff, so that we could turn somebody loose to go do it. And yeah, they did it. They were paid to do it, but most of them didn't do it for the money. They just basically did it for the adventure and the change of scenery. And that was pretty cool. And I actually did it myself. And so back, I don't remember exactly what year it was, but it was mid-'80s sometime. They called and they asked if we had somebody that could go down to the E1 plant in Ocala, Florida, and pick up a new E1 fire truck and bring it back to Phoenix. And at the time, I had a bunch of vacation I needed to get rid of, and so I said, yeah, I can do that. So I took vacation days off my regular job, and I flew down to Florida to pick the truck up. Well, there was no connecting flight directly down there, so basically we had to fly to Houston, change planes, and then fly to Tampa. And somebody from the fire truck company, Ocala is a ways north of Tampa. Anyway, they had somebody at the airport pick me up, and took me back up there, and by that time it was late in the day, so they put me in a motel for the night within walking distance of the plant. And so next morning I got up and walked over to the factory, and I'd been there before, so I knew the layout. But anyway, they had a waiting room there, and they were delivering 3 trucks that day, and they had 3 fire truck committees from the various fire departments that these trucks were going to. And the first thing I noticed when I walked in there is, I was from Arizona, and I spent a lot of time outside, and I was suntanned. I had a pretty good tan at the time, and I noticed that all these guys looked like they were a little bit overweight and pasty white. I don't know where they all came from. I never did find out. But the funny part about that is that when the guy walked in and finally come look for me, he walked in, looked around the room, zeroed in on me, says, "You look like you're from Arizona." And, well, yeah. So anyway, so the truck I had to bring was being sold to a little rural department outside the Phoenix area. And they didn't have anybody available to go get it. And the fire truck dealer, I think what ended up happening is I don't think they had anybody that wanted to go get it. And the reason for that is it was a little short wheelbase, 4-wheel drive thing. It was really tall. But the biggest thing was, because it was 4-wheel drive, it was limited to 56 miles an hour and did not have air conditioning. And it was August. And if you can imagine August in Florida and August coming across through the South. So they decided they'd see if they could get one of them gullible guys from Payson to go get it. And I ended up being the guy. So anyway, I picked up this truck, and it was built on a GMC chassis. It was a commercial truck. As I said, a little short wheelbase thing. And because of the 4-wheel drive setup it was very, very tall, and it rode like a dang buckboard. It was short wheelbase. It bucked back and forth, bounced real bad. And that might be another reason why the dealer didn't want to send any of those people to go get it. So right away I figured out that, this can be a pretty miserable thing driving it, clear cross country like that. Every time it hit an expansion joint on the freeway, it bounced up and down. So I found a fire station. I pulled in. I asked the guys if they'd fill the tank with water for me, and they did. And the extra weight of the water helped a lot. It wasn't perfect, but it did help a lot. And so I pointed her west and up I-75 from Ocala up to I-10, and then headed west. And I went through the Florida Panhandle and crossed through Mobile, Alabama, and crossed through Mississippi, and got into Louisiana. And I was a few miles east of Lake Charles, Louisiana. And I'm going along there at 56 miles an hour, as fast as that darn old truck will run, getting passed by every semi on the road. And all of a sudden it goes, and just quit running. Brand new truck. So that was in the days before cell phones. So eventually a Louisiana state trooper stopped and called for a tow truck for me. And being as a big fire truck and tall, they couldn't send a conventional tow truck. They had to send a semi ramp truck, what they call a land-all haul-all, which is designed to haul those big kind of vehicles. And so it was many hours later, seemed like years. They finally showed up, and they loaded me up, and they got me on the flatbed, and they started heading for Lake Charles. And the first overpass we got to, boy, he slowed way, way, way down, because I was pretty tall on top of that flatbed. But we made it under the overpass, and so I ended up, there was a big GMC dealership, truck dealership, in Lake Charles. And so they hauled me in there and dropped me off. And the guys from there, they took me over to a motel. And the motel was about a mile and a half from the dealership. But boy, it was a sketchy part of town. And I wasn't real comfortable there, but that was where they dumped me off at. And they said, well, it's a 24-hour-a-day shop. And they said, we'll see if we can get it fixed, and we'll come get you whenever we get it fixed, probably tomorrow morning. I said, okay. So tried to make the best of it. And so anyway, next morning came, and I waited and I waited and I waited. I waited for them I figured they'd call the motel and they'd, bring me up in the room, but nothing happened. So finally about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I finally had enough. So I grabbed my bag and I walked over to the dealership. Like I said, it was about a mile and a half, so not a big deal. And walked over there, and the truck was done. And somewhere along the line, they lost the note about that they were supposed to call me, and it kind of irritated the heck out of me at the time. But what had happened is the fuel pickup tube that pulls the diesel fuel out of the side tank, step tank, to the motor. The fitting came in from the top, and it had a tube that went down almost to the bottom of the tank, and it drew the fuel up from there. Well, that tube was made out of a lightweight aluminum, and the diesels of those days had vibrated quite a bit. And what had happened is that tube had vibrated and vibrated and vibrated, and it cracked. And once it cracked up near the fitting at the top, of course, it sucked air instead of fuel in there, and of course, motor wouldn't run. Well, they told me some big long dog and pony show that they'd never seen that before, but surprisingly, they had the part in stock to fix it. And they figured out what it was, and they had it fixed. And like I say, they misplaced the note that they were supposed to call me, so I basically sat over there for almost a full day. But I got back on the road again, heading west on I-10, and I went through all the usual suspects. I got off the freeway where the road dipped down toward Houston, and to try to miss the town as much as I could. And I didn't have a real high degree of success in that. I got into the north part of the Houston metro area and ended up going stoplight to stoplight for a while before I picked the freeway up on the other side. But I didn't want to go through downtown Houston if I could help it. I probably would have been faster if I had. Anyway, drove pretty late into the night and got into the little town of Segovia, Texas, and stopped in there, got a motel, and next morning got on the road and started heading west again. Well, any of you have driven across I-10 know that the west part of Texas goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. And it's pretty desolate out there and pretty flat. So anyway, trucking along, 56 miles an hour, hotter than heck, windows down, and bouncing along, and I get 27 miles west of Ozona, Texas. And all of a sudden, truck does exactly the same thing. And I'm thinking, man, there ain't no dealer for a long ways here. So anyway, I got off the side of the road, and almost immediately a guy in a car stopped, and he was a utility company supervisor, a manager of some kind. And once again, as I said, it was before they had cell phones. And anyway, he stopped and asked me what was wrong. I told him. So he said, well, get in the car. I'll take you back to town. And it was taken way out of his way, because it took him over 50 some miles out of his way to take me back to town and drop me off. But he knew of a little diesel shop in a Quonset hut in Ozona, Texas. And a little old guy there had been a diesel mechanic for, since well before I was born. And so I told him what I thought it was, and of course I was wearing shorts, and I didn't look like much of a mechanic guy, and so he kind of looked me up and down and kind of figured I had no idea what the hell I was talking about. But I told him, I said, I think that's what happened, and if we can figure out some way to bypass that, to get a fuel pickup in there, then we can get me back on the road. So he didn't believe me, but he took along the stuff that I suggested that he take, which was some fuel line and the necessary fittings to get it hooked up to the fuel line at the top of the tank that went to the engine. And so we got his old pickup, and we drove 27 miles back out into West Texas, out to where the fire truck was sitting alongside the highway. And so he started checking it, and sure enough, I was right. That damn pickup tube, same thing, brand new one, it broke again, cracked, same way, too much vibration. It wasn't built strong enough, it wasn't built heavy enough, and the vibration of that motor just cracked it, and it was sucking air. So anyway, he unraveled some of this fuel line, and it was funny because it was kind of the end of it was on a reel of it, and it was kind of toward the end of the reel, and it kept trying to curl back up again. So he's digging through his truck trying to figure out a way to handle that. And what he finally did is he had some lug nuts, old lug nuts off of semi-trucks. And he took some wire and he wired about 3 or 4 of these lug nuts to the end of this hose to keep it straight so it's still hanging down in the fuel. And he hooked it up and bled the air out of it, and by golly, the thing fired right up and run. So he was kind of impressed by that. He thought, well, this old geezer, this guy knows what he's talking about anyway. And so we got the truck running and put the tube down through the filler, where the filler cap would be, and tucked a bunch of rags around it. And anyway, I ended up driving the truck all the way back to Phoenix that way and turned it in. So I broke down twice, brand new fire truck, once in Louisiana and once in Texas, and both times it was the same thing. And I was looking for an adventure, and by golly, I got one. But both times I found good people that stopped and helped me and got me back on the road in a reasonable amount of time. Delivered the truck without a scratch to Phoenix like I was supposed to. So that was story number one. Okay, second story was actually one of our trucks. In 1989, we bought a new engine from Pierce Manufacturing, and Pierce is the largest manufacturer of custom fire trucks in the United States, and the largest in the world is Rosenbauer. They're number 2 in the United States, and they make a lot of stuff in Europe as well. But anyway, we bought a new Pierce in 1989. And in those days, like I said, they'd call somebody from the fire department and say, do you want to go up and get your truck and bring it home? And I said, well, heck yeah, for the adventure, we wanted to do that. The other thing it would do is, as those highway miles are good on that brand new truck, you get the motor broke in, and because a lot of fire trucks don't run a lot of highway miles after they go in service. They got a lot of little short jaunts, but they don't very often get out on the highway. So anyway, 2 of us, myself and one of our fire engineers, a guy named Jim Fry, and he's passed away a few years ago. And anyway, Jim Fry and I, we flew up to Appleton, Wisconsin, and the way to get to Appleton was you flew to Chicago O'Hare and then changed planes and took a puddle jumper up to Appleton. So we did that. And anyway, we got there, picked up our truck, and we drove straight west across Wisconsin till we got over into Minnesota, and then we took the interstate down through Des Moines. Well, up in northern Iowa, one of the guys had been a volunteer firefighter for us. He'd moved to Iowa to be next to his wife's family, and they lived just a couple miles off the interstate. So we actually stopped and visited with them, and that was kind of fun. And it happened to be he was a volunteer firefighter up there, and it happened to be the training night for their little volunteer fire department. So we took the truck over there and we did a show and tell on that new truck to that little fire department in that little town of Ventura, Iowa. And so after the meeting was over, we headed south, and we were on a timeline, and this was in August, and we wanted to be back here to Payson. If possible, we wanted to be in time for the rodeo parade that coming Saturday, the 3rd Saturday in August, which was our rodeo. And we figured if we could get back in time, that we'd put that fire truck to lead that parade. And so Jim and I headed south till late in the night, and we slept a couple hours in the cab of the truck at a rest stop in southern Iowa somewhere. And then we headed south and down through Kansas City, and we got down into Oklahoma, and we were pretty beat up by that time, and so we took a motel in Oklahoma City and recharged a little bit. And the next morning we got up and we started heading westbound on I-40 to Holbrook, and then head south from Holbrook, Arizona. Well, that truck was governed at 67 miles an hour, and most of the semis, of course, are running faster than that. And we had basically kind of an uneventful trip. We didn't have any trouble with the truck at all. We did have something that was kind of funny when we were coming across New Mexico, and that was there was a semi come up next to us, and there was a guy driving and a fairly attractive young lady in the passenger seat. And when they were on the flat or going downhill, they could drive faster than we could. But the minute we came to a hill, because the truck was so heavily loaded, it'd slow down and we passed them. So we passed each other back and forth 3 or 4 times, and we'd wave at each other. And finally, we got to a hill where once we topped over the top, here come that semi. And as the semi got up alongside of us, that young lady kind of turned over sideways in the seat, and she picked up her shirt and she flashed us, and a big smile and big wave. And so we blew the siren, honked the air horn at her, and they headed on down the hill and we never saw them again. But anyway, we got flashed by a lady in a truck. So anyway, we pushed it pretty hard and we got home on that Friday night, washed the truck right quick like the next morning. It didn't even belong to us yet. It still belonged to the dealer. But we had that truck in the rodeo parade on that Saturday morning. It led the rodeo parade. Didn't even have our name on the door yet. But by golly, that truck led the rodeo parade in 1989. And so we got 1 day of rest on Sunday, and Monday morning we took it down and took the truck on down to Phoenix and turned it in at the dealer. And they had a few things to do to it before they could deliver it back to us and we could put it in service to say it was ours. But that's two little stories about delivering fire trucks across country from the factory to back down to Phoenix. And both of them had their ins and outs. One of them I broke down twice. The other one we had no problem. But both times, of course, is adventures on the highway. So I don't know how long this has run, but I think it's probably time to end it. So as I always tell you, take care of each other, love each other. It's a beautiful day here. It's temperatures probably in the mid 70s here in the van and probably high 50s outside. We're supposed to have a few more days of good weather. So I'm going to tell you, I already told you, but I guess until we talk to you again, let me give you one more look back here at the van. And I'll tell you, I'll catch you on another one pretty quick. So for right now, it's peace out.